since I've left, everyone tells me that I should be okay with polygamy and not have issue with it. And I think two things when I hear that. First, either you know nothing about polygamy, or two, you've researched it and you should be a lot more sympathetic to my situation. Because anyone who's truly researched polygamy within Mormonism should know that it is a lot to hold, takes crazy mental gymnastics, and a really strong person. Because it totally broke me.
And me.
Yes. So we've got a ton of cards on the table, and we're going to take turns picking up a pile, and we're going to say a reason that people have told me that I should be okay with polygamy, and the reasons I'm not okay with polygamy, or we're not okay with polygamy.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go first. Ready? Let's see. Joseph Smith wasn't a polygamist, because some Mormons literally still believe that.
Oh, yes. So Joseph Smith has personal journals of his polygamy, and then I think that goes back to the Temple Lot cases too. There's multiple women that said they had sex with Joseph Smith and were his wives. There's ample evidence that Joseph Smith was a polygamist.
Personal journals of his wives as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So.
Oh, yep.
There we go. Got it.
So now you pick one. A reason why.
This one's my favorite. It was for the widows, because there were a ton of widows.
Yes. And so our arguments for that is, no, he did not marry just widows. He actually did this thing called Polyandry, and that is where you marry people that are already married to husbands. And he usually sent those husbands on missions and married their wives while the husbands were gone.
Yeah.
Without consent. I shouldn't say usually, but it did happen at least once.
I want to mention, though, in modern day, I feel like polygamy really hurts widows now, because nobody wants to marry a widow Mormon, because then they have to take care of the children, and they're not even sealed to them. They're sealed to the previous husband, and so they have to spend their whole life loving these children that aren't even theirs.
Another thing, oh, no, that was it.
You did it.
Okay, now it's my turn to pick one. Let's see. How about this one? We do not practice polygamy today. Here you go, Kendra.
Polygamy is in the temples. So you've got your husband receiving you and not giving, or you giving yourself to a husband and your husband receiving you. You've got him knowing your name. I think those are the two big ones.
A man can be sealed to multiple women, but a woman can't be sealed to multiple men
Yeah. So that's how polygamy is handled today, is that we have Nelson and Oakes who are polygamists, not that they have two wives who are living, but they have a wife who is dead and are sealed to her and their current wife. So the first wife didn't even consent to the fact that she will be polygamous for eternity, because she died.
Yep. Okay. Go ahead and
that it was a normal age. I'm guessing this was referring to the fact that polygamy was okay because I'm guessing this refers to the fact that they married young women at young ages, like 14 to 19, I feel is pretty young.
So the youngest wife Joseph Smith has is 14 years old, and that was not an average age to get married. The average age during that time period was 21 to 22. And there were outliers, but it wasn't socially acceptable to marry a 14-year-old girl. Yep. So.
Well, and also a lot of the wives that Joseph Smith married, they had taken them in as surrogate daughters because their parents had passed or were busy doing missions and stuff.
Foster kids,
taking advantage of a situation.
Their relationship was one of such that they shouldn't be marrying them. Okay. This one. Someone in my ward recently told me this one. Don't you know there will be more righteous women than men in heaven?
Men's are pigs, and they're all our leaders.
Yeah. When you tell me that a bunch of women are going to get in, but not men, you're telling me that you think men are pigs, and then to that I have to say, why are they our leaders?
Yeah.
We should be leading if we're the righteous or not righteous race, if we're the righteous gender, we should be leading.
You know what? We do everything in the church anyways. Like,
no, there's so much we don't do in the church. We don't.
Well, like all the underlying stuff. They want our sacrifice, but not our voices. So we sacrifice our time and our energy, and poor Relief Society people. Okay. Joseph Smith did not have sex with his wives, and it was just for eternity.
Yeah. So people will argue that the relationships of women that he was sealed to were just to be sealed for their eternity, and they weren't sexual. And
that goes against everything that the scriptures and the Bible says about the reason why polygamy was sanctioned by God.
Yeah.
It was to
raise righteous seed. So he's either breaking his own commandments that he laid out in D&C, or, he's crazy. But also, there is proof with multiple accounts, and these aren't just, there's multiple accounts of ex-Mormons or enemies of his that said that he had sex, but there's also a ton of accounts from his own wives and his own friends and people in the church that were good standing members that said that he was having sex with these women.
Yeah.
Not all of them, but some of them.
I don't remember whose turn it is.
Mine.
Okay.
Joseph Smith was honest about polygamy with the public and the church.
Oh my God.
Like, you'd have to be a crazy person to believe this.
He denied. And if that didn't work, he sent his little mobs to go fix whatever he wanted. So, we don't practice polygamy. He pretty much said that all the time in public. He wrote down a whole section in D&C saying, marriage is between a man and a woman. And then to the wives, we practice polygamy. So he's like constantly pulling
to the public, he'd say, we don't practice polygamy. And to the wives, he'd say, we practice plural marriage.
Because and spiritual wivery. Mm-hmm. That's another key term. Yes. Okay.
You're good.
Okay. So he burned down a printing press that exposed him, and that led to his death. And he didn't set the guidelines, his own guidelines. So D&C 132 is very explicit about the guidelines that are set around polygamy. Has to be virgin, has to have permission from the first wife. He didn't follow those guidelines, and it was to raise up seed, and there are no proven children from Joseph Smith.
Dang.
He excommunicated individuals that disagreed with him. So Oliver Cowdery is a big one. Oliver Cowdery said that he had a dirty, nasty affair, and he pretty much excommunicated him because he disagreed with, was ruining the reputation of the prophet.
And Oliver Cowdery wasn't the only person that got high up, realized that they were practicing polygamy, and didn't agree with it. There were other people too, and they were also excommunicated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Me. Emma got to pick the wives.
It's okay. Emma got to pick the wives. No. Joseph Smith kept it a secret. So, the best story to prove this example is with the Partridge sisters. He married the Partridge sisters, and then later gets Emma to accept polygamy through lots of threats and manipulation. He basically said no women in the church could get their endowments until she accepted polygamy and got her own endowment. And she picks the Partridge sisters to be his wives, and they go through this whole fake second ceremony. Okay, there were not enough men in the Salt Lake Valley. That's why God gave us polygamy.
Yeah, there were lots of women. So, actually, young men would go out and try to meet the trains as they were coming in so that they had a chance of actually getting a wife, because they would get to the valley and these apostles and prophets would just snatch them up, at least just the young pretty ones. And so they were. So
if you wanted a young pretty wife, you had to meet them at the train.
There was actually a lack of women in the Salt Lake Valley, and I actually have a lot of sympathy because you got to think of the people who are coming across. They're coming from Europe, and they don't know the rumors about the polygamists in Utah, and so
all they know is that the church is like, no, we don't practice polygamy.
Yeah.
We don't.
And then they fall in love with the gospel. They travel thousands of miles across the ocean, across the whole U.S. They get to the valley and find out, oh shit, there's polygamy here, they aren't going to turn around and go home.
Well, and most of them couldn't.
Yeah.
Like, they'd used everything to come out there. Okay, so this is actually an idea that I believed, that there were not enough men in the Salt Lake Valley. And I remember when you told me this fact, I was like,
yeah. Well, and so I learned that at BYU, Idaho in my Western history class. And my professor was an amazing woman, and we talked about polygamy, which is a big reason that the West was settled, and so it's a big part of Western history. She talked about polygamy, and there were like 5 or 6 of us that were in her office after the class just bawling. Mm-hmm. And she says she does this every semester, and there's always girls crying in her office afterwards.
No boys.
No boys. So it's just the lies that we grew up with that make us feel comfortable, and they're lies.
And it's really uncomfortable to find out the truth.
Yes.
Hope you guys are doing okay, because we got 2 more reasons. So, you get to pick which one.
Okay. He only did it after he got a revelation.
Yes, and this isn't true because his revelation was written down years after he had already taken his first polygamous wife, Fanny Alger. Had an affair, a dirty, rotten affair with Fanny Alger.
In the barn.
Celestializing in the barn.
Celestializing, I love it.
Here we go. So he celestialized with Fanny in 1833, and the revelation wasn't written down until 1843. So do with that whatever you want to do with that in your mind.
Yes.
You can think whatever you want. I know what I think. I think he had no revelation to be doing this.
No revelation.
Okay.
I think he made it up.
The women accepted polygamy. They wanted to be his polygamous wives.
Yes. Okay, so the amount that Joseph Smith went to convince women that he was doing God's will is astounding. So, of course, there is the story of the angel with the flaming sword and the angel with no flaming sword, just the sword, telling him that he was going to be destroyed, he was going to be removed as prophet if he did not follow through on polygamy. So he comes to these women, says, pretty much, you're preventing me from being the prophet if you don't celestialize with me.
I will die if you don't have sex with me. I will die if you don't marry me, which means you have to have sex with me.
Okay, and think about it in this way. These are young women, like,
who believe in the church,
yes,
and this is their prophet.
Yeah, and they're hearing their parents talk about Joseph Smith in a very endearing, loving, like, we believe him, we follow him, we're obedient to him way. And then Joseph Smith is approaching them privately, or even having brothers and fathers approach them.
And if that doesn't work, having other women who are already polygamous with him approach them.
Yeah, and manipulate them and talk to them about believing him. So a big one in this is the happiness letter by Nancy Rigdon.
No, by Joseph Smith for Nancy Rigdon.
Thank you. That doesn't even mention any of the reason he gives for polygamy, which is the sealings and to be like together for eternity. Doesn't mention any of that, and is just manipulative in the language that is used to convince Nancy that pretty much obedience to him is obedience to God, and she, in order to be a righteous person, she needs to obey her prophet.
I mean, he also said things like, it's wrong to murder, but Nephi had to murder Laban. And it's wrong to be adulterous, but it won't be wrong to be adulterous with me.
Yes. So something that is wrong can be right in the right circumstance.
And you can trust me.
Because I'm
also burn this letter.
Yes.
And
if you think we're making it up, we're not. So also, the idea that if you were connected to Joseph Smith in this life, you were your entire family would be exalted in the next life. So you have fathers sacrificing their daughters to be sealed to Joseph Smith so that the entire family can be together.
And he also used it as a line for women, like, if you marry me, I will guarantee exaltation for all your dead loved ones.
Yeah. So you're not
so manipulative.
At 16, you're not going to be like, nah.
Screw my loved ones that I've lost to whatever crazy diseases they had back then. Like, also, death was a big part of their reality back then. They were losing loved ones. The death rate was just higher back then.
Yeah. So death, like the idea of there being an afterlife and being together as your family, I would say is even stronger back then because of the lack of time that they had together as a family than it is now. It's pretty appealing now, but
yeah,
I think the desire
even
was
more
strong.
So.
Yeah.
Well, they were just dealing with more death.
Yeah. So social pressure. This is actually documented where Joseph Smith said he would ruin women's reputation if they did not participate with him.
Oh my
word. Which, Joseph Smith is pretty much the social,
he was an influential person. He was the governor of Nauvoo.
He was everything in Nauvoo. And so if Joseph Smith is like, oh, this person's bad, the entire population of Nauvoo would reject that person. Okay. So grooming, this is a term used to show that girls... Okay, so you have a sexual predator and he's grooming a younger person, so they are becoming close to them, gaining their trust. These girls lived with him as maids, as babysitters, as babysitter sisters and foster kids.
You said baby sisters again.
Well, you know what? It could have happened. So these girls are close to him and see him as someone that they can trust. And he groomed them for that. So,
well, and not just the girls, some of the older women he married, he either lived with them as he was traveling or they lived with him while they were traveling. He usually chose people that he lived with and was connected with and was close with.
Yeah.
He never got inspiration to marry someone that might turn him in for being a pervert.
Yes. Yes.
Not to say that didn't happen to him. There were women that he thought he could marry that did turn on him.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. If you go to the happiness letter, it is obvious that he knows Nancy to some degree and knows what her desire is. Everyone's desire is to be happy. And he's using his knowledge about her and the way she's grown up and learned things to manipulate a situation in order to, twist it in a righteous way. And that's what he does.
Okay, guys, so what do you think? These are just some of the reasons that people have told me that I should be okay with polygamy and why I'm not okay with polygamy. You can have an opinion on either side. If you agree, I'd love to hear in the comments. If you disagree, go ahead and put that in the comments. And if you have other reasons why you're okay or not okay with polygamy, put it in the comments.
Ooh. Our understanding of polygamy is so limited now that our hearts will be opened in the next life and will understand and be more loving.
Okay. Yes. So maybe polygamy is a godly thing that attribute that we can't comprehend in our mortal lives. So why did he give it to us? Why didn't he just save that for heaven? You guys, we're going to do a whole other episode where we go deep into all the details, and it will only scratch the surface. Look forward to that other video coming out where we talk a whole lot more about polygamy, and we'll see you next time. Bye!